So we're back, we're rested, and now we got warm-ups. We got to go back, we got to start pick up where we left off. It's all good. All right, hey. So, domain, always all real numbers. Range, I don't know yet. The amplitude of this one. What's the amplitude of this one? 3/2. Which means it goes all the way up to 3/2. Goes all the way down to negative 3/2. Which means the middle's at 0. Which means the range of my values is from negative 3/2 to positive 3/2. Okay. Love it. Starts at 0. It's got a period of 2 pi, so that means it ends at 2 pi. Okay. Start plus period equals end. Okay, just so you know. It's a sine curve, so normally the sine curve would go like that, correct? Normally. But negative a value flips that all around, and so it ends up going down first, and then up. We have to label our axes vertically 3 times, horizontally 5 times. So we start with the low, then we go to the middle, and then we go to the high. Okay? So high, low, and middle are all on there. Start and end are on horizontally, but then we also cut it in half, cut it in half, cut it in half. 3/2. Good? Love it. Okay? So that's what we were doing right before break. Those last couple of days we were talking about A and how A is the amplitude. And if A, so A really has effects on the high. I almost said maximum, which it is. The high is the maximum. It has effects on the low, and it has effects on the range. And that's what A, all that gets affected by A, or A has control over those 3 things. Okay? The other thing that we need to know is that if we have a negative A value, we flip the graph. Okay? We flip both sine and cosine. Okay? So we just did a sine one. Cosine normally starts at the high point, then goes to the middle, then goes to low, then back to the middle, and then ends at the high point again. Okay? We need to flip that so it would go low, middle, high, middle, low. Okay? Today, what we're going to do is we're going to focus in on B. We're going to talk about B now. Okay? So with your graphing calculators, what I would like you to do is I would like you to explore these 2 functions. Okay? So first off, we're going to, if you're using one of our calculators, I'd start a new program because it's probably already on there from the last class, but then this way you can actually see what's going on with it. So what we're going to do is we're going to start in the graph. First thing that you should do is you should make sure that you're graphing, when you're graphing trig functions, we graph in radians. Okay? So make sure that you got radians up there. If you don't have radians up there, it's a menu, settings, graphing angle needs to be in radians. Okay? So then we have sine of x is our first, whoops, tap the brakes. Come on back to me. Where did you go? Oh, what's this? Get rid of that. Exit out of that. There. Now we're back into it. Maybe. There's sine of x. Thank you. Okay. But then we want to adjust our window. So we want our window to be from 0 to 2 pi. And from -2 to +2. Okay? So there's our first one. Then our second one, we want it to be the sine of y 5x. What can you tell me about those two graphs? And I can actually switch off of them now, and I can go to here. And what can you tell me about those two graphs? Any observations? What do you got?
I think it's like affecting the period of just one period.
Okay.
The
So it's making it longer or shorter?
Multiplying it by half
Is making the period go longer. So if I took that and actually went out to 4 pi, I'd see one complete purple graph, or one complete purple wave, I should say. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, I would agree with that. What about amplitudes? What do we notice about the amplitudes? Or the highs, the lows, the middles, the starts, that stuff. What do you got, Gabe? The same. So it's got the same height, or goes to the same high point, right? If I were to expand this graph out to the other 4 pi, we'd see it goes to the same low point. It's got the same start. So the only thing that's really being affected is that period. Yep. Okay. So what I would like you to do now is, on your calculator, I'd like you to explore those 5 graphs over there and try and find what the period is. Now, I will tell you back on the graphing calculator, okay, the way that you can go about trying to find the period is you've got to adjust the window. And so here, the window settings, we went to 4 because we saw half of the graph. So we go out to 4 pi, and now I see one full cycle on my 1/2 x graph. Okay? So do some exploring of those 5, and then we'll come back and we'll talk periods of those 5. All right, so if I'm looking at these, I would say the cosine of 2x, what do we get for a period there? 1 lap, 1 wave. How far? Pi. Yep. Got a period of pi. Cosine of 1/3 x. Period. 6 pi. Sine of 3x. Not 3 pi over 2. Nope. 2 pi over 3. Sine of 4x. Pi over 2. cosine of 1/5 x. Ten pi. Okay? Now, underneath the 16-time World Heavyweights Champion is a couple of notes about negative b values. So if b is negative, we have to go back to our identities. And you should have with you a sheet, an identities sheet. That's the sheet that we will be referring to when b is negative. Okay? So when b is negative, the two identities that we're going to be dealing with are cosine of negative t and sine of negative t. So that's identities number 1 and 2 on your identity sheet. Cosine of negative t says that this is just the cosine of t, and this is negative sine of t. So y equals sine of negative 2x would be the same graph as y equals negative sine of positive 2x. So what do you know about a negative b value with sine? What do we know about negative b values with sines? They flip the graph, and they flip the sine curve. Okay? But with cosine, it doesn't. Oops, that's an X, not a T. Okay? So a negative b value will flip the sine curve, and it does absolutely nothing to the cosine curve. Okay? It's right there. Okay? So the formula that you should memorize, not going to lie to you, you're going to want to memorize this formula as we go forward here graphing these things. And that formula is this one right here, that the period is equal to 2 pi divided by the absolute value of b. Okay? If we go back, or if I were to go back to that other one, or the last slide when you guys were doing these on the calculator, took b value, 2 pi divided by it, got me the period. Okay? That's why I knew it was 2 pi over 3 was the period of that one where we were having issues with. And the next one was pi over 2. And the next one was 10 pi. Okay? Because we divided those out. Okay? Memorize, memorize, memorize. Okay? So, let's talk here about a sketch here of y equals the sine of 2x. I know that my domain is all real numbers, because it's always going to be all real numbers. I know that my amplitude here is 1, which means that my high is at 1 and my low is at negative 1, which means my range is from negative 1 to positive 1. I know that this one is going to start at 0 because we don't have a C value. C values are tomorrow. We'll talk about starting at different spots. But I know it's going to start there. But now what I've got to do is I've got to say that my period is equal to 2 pi divided by the absolute value of b, B in this case is 2. Absolute value of 2 is 2. So I get 2 pi divided by 2. So my period here is pi. Start plus period is my end. So I end at pi. That's it. Okay. Sine curve, no flips because we don't have any negative values. Starts in the middle, up, middle, down, middle. Then I still need to label my two axes. Oops, not 2 pi, excuse me. Now we're only all the way out to pi, which means this is pi over 2, which means this is pi over 4, and this is 3 pi over 4. Starts at 0, ends at pi, so half is pi over 2. Half of pi over 2 is pi over 4. Half of pi over 2 to pi is 3 pi over 4. Questions, comments, concerns? Snide comments? Good? Try that one once. Sketch the graph of the cosine of 1/3 x. I get a period on this one of 6 pi. 2 pi divided by 1/3 is 6 pi. Cosine, with positive values all around, starts up, ends up. Half of 6 pi is 3 pi. Half of 3 pi is 3 pi over 2. 3 pi plus 6 pi is 9 pi. Divided by 2 is 9 pi over 2. Average, middle. Questions, comments, concerns, clarifications? Yes, it's snowing. Good. Awesome sauce. Huh? Let's compare these two graphs. Love them. One's got a positive A value, one's got a negative A value. Yeah, let's do these. Give you a couple minutes to get these done. Amplitude on the first one here is now 3. You got a period of 4 pi. means we start at 0, end at 4 pi. Normal sine curve. Only difference is we're going all the way down to -3, going all the way up to +3. 4 pi is out here. That means we get 3 pi. Yes? Okay. Anything change on the bottom one in terms of domain, range, high, low, middle, amplitude, start, end, period? Anything change at all? The only thing that changes down here is that instead of going up, we go down. Everything else stayed the same. Yep. Love it. One last one to do. Try that one. Love it. Domain, all real numbers. Amplitude is 2. I get a period of pi, so it means I'm starting at 0, ending at pi. Yes? Normal cosine curve would start up, end up. Negative a value tells me I'm going to start down and end down. Going from 0 out to pi. Gets me that. Yes? Questions, comments, concerns, clarifications? Awesome sauce. Love it.